Origin is the latest movie from Ava DuVernay, and it is based on the book Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson, which is a book talking about the different ways that we build up hierarchies of control in different societies. And honestly, when I heard that this was a nonfiction book that was being adapted into a narrative film, I was a little confused. I thought it would have made more sense to adapt it as like a documentary. But Ava DuVernay decided to basically adapt it as like kind of a biopic for Isabel Wilkerson and her process of writing this book. Even so, if you've seen an Ava DuVernay film, she is pretty masterful at weaving in your different social commentary and like multiple narratives and stuff like that. And it does have a quasi-documentary feel. There's several case studies that are brought up in the book, I assume, that are acted out in the film as the main character is like narrating some of that stuff. But the whole film is set with the backdrop that Trayvon Martin has just been murdered, and she is asked by her old editor to come back and write an article about the murder because he thinks she would have an interesting perspective, and that kind of inspires her to be like, I don't want to write an article. I want to like get into the story. And one thing she points out is like, everyone's calling this racist, but like I don't think that is sufficient to describe what's going on, because like, why does a Hispanic man kill a black kid to protect an all-white neighborhood? So she like decided to write this book and go further into researching different ways that hierarchies are constructed. And like I said, the book that she wrote is called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents. And she ultimately decides that in discussing everything in America in terms of race is not sufficient. And she makes a more direct comparison to the caste system in India, because she sees these systems of control everywhere, all throughout the world, and it's not always racially divided, right? Like she points out how the Jews in Germany looked white like everyone else, but they were discriminated against. In India, you have the caste system that isn't divided along racial lines, it's divided along caste lines. But also, like, I was a little surprised that the film spent so little time in India, given that that's kind of the crux of, like, her thesis. But I guess it makes sense because it's an American film for an American audience, and it wants to contextualize that in ways that are more directly applicable to the American experience, to the racial experience of the caste divide system in America. And there's a lot of moments where they go into like ways that people break the social order. People step outside of their caste lines. And there's even a moment where she kind of does it herself. She's writing the book in the aftermath of losing both her husband and her mother in the same year. And there's a moment where her basement is flooding, and she hires a plumber to come in and take a look at it. And the plumber, who's played by Nick Offerman, comes in wearing a MAGA hat. And Isabel Wilkerson is a black woman. And he's basically kind of not paying close attention, saying, oh, it's probably the sink is leaking. And she's like, the sink isn't even full. What are you talking about? And he's just like, not even like really listening to her, just kind of writing things down. She gets the feeling, okay, he doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to help this black woman. But instead of, confronting him on that, she instead humanizes herself to him. She talks about how things just keep piling up when, she had her husband help with all that stuff, but now he's gone and her mother's gone. And she asks him about his parents. And he brings up how his mother had died in like the 90s and his dad's still alive. And she's like, oh, that must be nice. He's like, no, that guy's the meanest son of a bitch. But it's that connection where he realizes, oh, right, she's a person. He deals with the same kind of things I deal with, that he actually is like, you know what, let me take a look. And he like goes in and like actually figures out where the leak is coming from. And it's not to say that like the message of the movie is just, oh, be nice to the people who are mean to you. It's a deeper message in that these caste systems are created to keep us separate, to keep us from getting to know each other as people, to realize that everyone is just a person. And eventually at the end of the movie, she kind of like states the thesis where she talks about some of the main pillars of how the caste hierarchy is maintained, and a lot of them have to do with like controlling relationships, whether it's anti-miscegenation laws or things of that ilk. It's a really good movie just in terms of talking about little examples of things. She had a confrontation at some point in the movie when she goes to Germany and is talking to a Jewish woman who says, "I think your thesis is flawed. I don't think you can compare the Jewish experience with the Holocaust to the slave trade, because they wanted you. Yes, you were enslaved for hundreds of years, but they were using you for something, and it was to their benefit that you exist, whereas they just wanted to exterminate us. So I don't think you can compare it." And then she goes and finds out about a particular meeting where the Nazis were discussing how they were going to start the Holocaust, and they used Jim Crow laws to build upon it. So she's like, aha, here is the connection. So, scenes like that, case studies of like, there were some sociologists back in like the 20s or 30s. There's two couples, a black couple and a white couple, who moved to a deep South town and just played their roles in the respective communities to document everything that was going on, and how they would have to, meet out in the fields so that nobody could see them interacting, because that would break the taboo that they're not supposed to be friends. Yeah, it's a pretty good movie. I would like to read the book. I imagine the movie is a pretty good primer for the book, but the book will probably give you a more solid basis to make your arguments. But I would recommend it. Hey, thanks for watching. Your view means a lot. Don't forget to toss me a like and subscribe and ring the bell. And drop a comment below telling me what you thought of the video. I stream Mondays and Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific and Sundays at 2, so catch me live and join in on the convo. You can find all my socials in the description below, and thank you to all my patrons, with a very special shout out to my Whaled Shark tier patron Ryan D and my Anemone Friend tier patron Piftle Cakes. Your support means the world. Catch you next time.